The phone call is that, Raam, are you sitting down? My own friends and like celebrity friends and family and other people, like they wouldn't even text me condolences. I've accrued a huge debt in gambling. I fucked up my finances. I'm in debt. I've embarrassed myself. I'm in a terrible situation. I once had like 550 Bitcoins and I don't have them anymore, obviously, or else I wouldn't be here right now. I know, we're off to a great start, I know.
It can be great if you love the person, but most of the time when you don't. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 369 of Roqe. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Maybe it's finally time for Iranians to take copyright seriously. Respect for creative ownership is not just a legal nicety. You might say it's the bedrock of any civilized cultural ecosystem. So when someone builds something original, a song, a script, a story, a show, and another party takes it without permission, that's not homage. That's not flattery. That's theft. And yet, in the Persian cultural universe, both inside Iran and beyond, this kind of theft too often flies under the radar, or worse, gets waved off as normal, as if originality is optional, as if ideas don't belong to anyone, as if nobody's really watching. Maybe it's time for Iranians to take copyright seriously. This past week marked 5 years since we launched Roqe. April 16, 2020, the beginning of a vision to tell stories that mattered, to elevate unheard voices, to do long-form interviews, to build something authentic and we hope lasting in a new Iranian media space. And this past weekend, right around our anniversary, we found out that a new Persian TV program produced in Iran has launched. And it's also called Roqe. And by the way, it's an interview show, and its colors are black and red. Right. No call, no conversation, no checking copyright, no attempt to license or ask or even acknowledge, just taken, as if the name, the concept, the brand we've nurtured for 5 years was simply free for the lifting. And look, obviously we're just some little podcast, right? Albeit with over 30 million streams since we launched. But we're emanating from Canada, clearly not important enough. You'd think they might have checked, though. And if they didn't, that's what we face. And if they did, I rest my case. It's time for Iranians to take copyright seriously. Now, I get it. We're in a new age with AI and digital duplication, with algorithms churning out content at warp speed, and with a generation raised on memes and mashups. Some might argue that intellectual property feels quaint, even archaic. But if anything, this moment makes creative ownership more sacred, not less. In a world where imitation is easy, originality has to be defended. And the rights of the creator matter more than ever. And I wish I could say I was surprised at the stealing, but I've seen this before with no ceiling. And many of you have too. Let's leave Roqe aside. Consider the countless Persian streaming platforms that host films, broadcast concerts, or play music with no regard for licensing, no royalty payments, no respect for the creators. Admit it, you know them. It's not uncommon to see entire Western movies with Persian subtitles slapped on, uploaded to the benefit of clicks and Irani ad dollars. Or indie films by Iranian expats pirated online before they even finish festival runs. You want an example? The acclaimed film Circumstance by Mariam Keshavarz, a powerful, bold, banned in Iran exploration of LGBTQ themes, was widely pirated and distributed in Persian circles, often with bootleg translations, and no credit to the filmmaker. Her story, her vision, her intellectual property treated like public domain just because it was made by one of our own? Yes, her film made waves underground. Yes, it was watched, but not in a way that empowered her materially as an artist, not in a way that gave her anything back. It's a kind of applause without hands, fame without fairness, reach without respect. It's time for Iranians to take copyright seriously. Then there's the sad case of dear Farid Zoland, whom we've had on this program a couple of times, a living legend, the maestro behind some of the greatest Persian pop classics. His melodies are sung at weddings and protests and parties across the globe. Find an Iranian who wouldn't think him a hero, but his royalties, pretty much zero. Despite a catalog that would have made him a millionaire many times over in any Western market, Farid lives with modest means, not because he lacked talent, but because too many played his music without paying for it, because there were no enforceable laws, and let's be honest, because too few cared. And then consider the devastating example of Iraj Pezeshkzad, the brilliant mind behind My Uncle Napoleon, Dayjun Napoleon. Published in 1973, the novel became a cultural phenomenon in Iran, leading to a highly successful television adaptation in 1976. The series was a massive hit, with the broadcaster reportedly paying about 200 million riyals, 4 times the production cost, to buy the rights to the series. Yet, despite the show's immense popularity and financial success, Pezeshkzad himself did not receive compensation anywhere near commensurate with the value his work generated. As another legendary Iranian once told me with a whisper, Iraj had barely made a penny from My Uncle Napoleon before he died in 2022. In contrast, authors of similarly beloved works in the West have reaped significant financial rewards. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, became a billionaire through royalties and related revenues. Surely Pezeshkzad's experience underscores the systemic issues in recognizing and compensating creative talent within the Iranian cultural sphere. You see, this isn't just about names or brands or money. It's about values. How do we expect to cultivate a thriving creative culture if we don't protect the creators, if we don't honor the ownership of ideas, if we don't teach our kids that downloading creative content without paying for it isn't just some harmless little act, it's an erasure of the artist behind it? It's time for Iranians to take copyright seriously. And yes, this is also about Roqe, a name we built with care, a show we built from scratch, a platform born of passion and persistence. So when someone else slaps that name on a new program on the same date, no less, it doesn't just feel careless, it feels deliberate and dismissive. Maybe in some circles that won't matter. Obviously, this won't make big headlines, but it should start a conversation, no? Because until we respect those who create, their rights, their work, their ownership, we remain stuck in a cycle that punishes innovation and rewards appropriation. It's not too late to shift the mindset, but it starts with calling it out loudly, clearly, proudly. Creative work has value. Names matter. Ideas matter. Intellectual property should not be forsaken. And Roqe, well, it was already taken. It's April 24, 2025. This is Roqe. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 369 of Roqe. I am Jian Gomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto. Salam Dustan Aziz. Durud ba shoma. Hope you are doing well wherever you are tuning in from around the world. This is a show that we have been looking forward to sharing with you, and we're going to do it today. A conversation with the popular Iranian-Canadian musician and songwriter and podcaster, King Raam. Now, Raam was here in the Roqe Hub for a really special event about 2 or 3 weeks ago in front of a sold-out crowd here at our Roqe Hub. It's a very... we focused the conversation on the difficulty he's been through in the last 10 years, specifically the horrific killing of his father in Evin prison in Iran a few years back, and how he finds meaning in life after that kind of loss. The story of his family, the story of what he's been through, and the story of how he has come out of it. He was very admirably emotional and Roqe in our conversation in front of a live audience, really open open and honest. It was also very funny at times. It's not just morbid, but also I think an entertaining conversation. And he performs a couple of songs. We're going to give that to you today, and we're very excited to have King Raam on this program. Now, before we get to that, we should mention that last week we had an exclusive feature interview with Andy, the legendary Iranian pop singer Andy. We've had lots of reaction to that all over our platforms. And now I think Andy, well, it was exclusive last week, wasn't it, Rohan? But now we're seeing him
now.
He's sort of everywhere now. He's partly everywhere because of the Azizam song that he obviously sings on, and he's in the video. The Azizam song, which is great. Thank you, Ed Sheeran. But I'm in the camp, like my friends are now divided between people who, everybody appreciates it. Everybody appreciates the nod to Persian language, singing culture, a positive side of us, as Andy said on the show, a way to see Iranians in a positive light rather than the negative generalizations and stereotypes we're used to in the news, etc. But the song, dude, how many times do we have to hear this song? And knowing that we're going to hear this song at Persian Mehmooni's and galas for the next 50 years is a little bit daunting for some people. I have friends who are already trying to boycott Azizam, with no disrespect to Ed Sheeran or Gugush or Andy or anybody who was involved in it. Super P, you are you in the boycott category fully, or are you just like sick of it?
I'm a little bit sick of it, because not a little bit, actually more than a little bit. I was even thinking about not checking my Instagram for the next couple of weeks.
Just to avoid the Azizam song.
Honestly, can we just move on? I appreciate it, and it was great that he did that. He's really cool, but it's enough.
You're sick of the song? چه غلطی کرده این بیچاره Ed Sheeran. He's and Akhay Savi Roham, your feeling is it too much, Azizam?
No, I'm still fine with it, because I have to listen to it at least 10 times a day because of my daughter.
Your daughter, who's like 4?
3.5.
3.5.
She loves Ed Sheeran. And she has to listen.
Did you call him Ed Sheeran?
I
think so. Yeah.
That's a good name for him. Why hasn't he been called Ed Sheeran by the? Yeah, he is Sheeran. We have to listen to the English version and then the Farsi version after that, and repeat. So you're not sick of it on behalf of your daughter?
Yeah.
Who
because she loves it. I love it.
I think when 3.5-year-olds are addicted to it, that's part of the problem that we're facing with this.
That's a different conversation.
All love and no disrespect to Ed, of course, and it is. There's something there. That's why it caught on, and like wildfire. But Persians, we do have the ability to overdo things, and it's and it's also, what this is called, an earworm. It means it gets in your ear, and it's hard to knock it out of your brain. Poor Parisa has been checking into a mental institution, trying to get away from Azizam. She just stopped all social media activity. Also, like I should say, last weekend we talked about Andy. He had a big show here. I experienced in about 48 hours the tremendous growth and diversity of the Iranian community in Toronto. First of all, here at the Roqe Hub, we had a very special night, Ideas at the Roqe Hub, with Sabah Zamani, which we'll be giving you in the coming days, the wonderful singer and songwriter, and her story of being in prison in Iran. Then the next night, there was a very different crowd when I went to Andy and Shohre and Donya. And then the day after that, I went to the Innovate Toronto conference, which was like Persian tech nerds in the best of ways. It was brilliant thinkers in our community. Totally different crowd. Then in the afternoon, I went to this celebration of what's it called?
Ordi Behesh.
Ordi Behesh. That's it.
No, Ordi Behesh.
What is that?
اردیبهشتگان, I think.
Already Beheshtagon.
I'm
It's
not sure. I'm just.
it was like a Zartoshti kind of celebration.
okay.
It was actually a wonderful event, and our very own Anahita Naibi danced with Hur dance at it, and it was a great event. I'll get the proper title and let you know. And then that night, totally different crowd. This is how big the Iranian community in Toronto. If you're watching this anywhere else in the world right now, this is how big the Iranian community is. That all these events are happening. Most of them sold out. Then that night, I went to Hidden and Shaye, which was the rappers, which was awesome, and also a completely different crowd. The growth of the Iranian community, I tell you. So it was it's an interesting time to be an Iranian in Toronto, especially one who grew up here when there were no other Iranians in Toronto, and now sees all these people.
Are you happy about that?
Most of the time I'm happy about that. It's just when they're singing Azizam 24/7 that I so anyway, there you go. Very excited about our featured guest today. We'll get to it. Let's go for it. We're going to give you from live at the Roqe Hub, King Raam, born Ramin Sayed Emami in 1981 in Bushehr, Iran, is an Iranian-Canadian musician, writer, and podcast host whose career embodies, you might say, a fusion of cultural influences and artistic evolution. His musical journey commenced as the founder and lead vocalist of Hypernova, a post-punk band that emerged from Tehran's underground scene in the early 2000s. Hypernova's distinctive sound and defiant spirit garnered international attention, leading to tours across North America and features in prominent media outlets such as the New York Times, MTV, NPR. Their track Viva la Resistance even found its way onto the popular video game Rock Band 3, symbolizing a rebellious anthem that transcended borders. Transitioning to a solo career under the moniker King Raam, he released his debut album Songs of the Wolves in 2011, showcasing a more introspective and personal musical style. Beyond his musical endeavors, Raam ventured into the realm of podcasting with Masti o Rasti, a platform where he engages in candid conversations reflecting his commitment to open dialogue and cultural discourse. His multifaceted career not only highlights his versatility as an artist, but also underscores his role as a bridge between Eastern and Western artistic expressions. So, recorded very recently as part of our Ideas at the Roqe Hub series in front of a sold-out crowd here at the Roqe Hub, here now is a performance and conversation with King Raam.
سلام دوستان، من رام هستم. I am Raam, Ramin Sayed Emami. Thank you to Jian, Roqe, and the team for having me. It's really nice to be here. Jian, we all grew up, seeing Jian and the things that he could do, and we're like, one day I'll grow up and I'll be just like Jian. No, I'm pretty much the same age. He's not that old. But I'm really happy to be here, and I'm going to play a couple songs for you guys. We'll have a pretty cool talk. Hopefully it won't get too dark and depressing. We'll try to keep it light. I mean, it is a pretty tough subject to talk about love and loss and recovery and all those nice things. But I appreciate the opportunity to have this sort of open conversation. So without further ado, we'll start with the Lazy Bee, obviously. امشب همون شبیه که من بدون تو خونه میرم امروز همون روزی بود که قلبمو زیر پات له کردی مست و پاتیلم کردی مگه این رسم مطلی و راستی شاید فردا خوب بشه این جای زخم قدیمی من. زنبورای تنبل روی شیروانی اصل میسازن و من میدونم یه روز نوبت من میشه که پرواز کنم ملکه باغانیش بزنم. اسمش همون اسمیه که توی خوابم ول نمیکنه. پستچی هی در میزنه من سر زیر بالش نفرینه میکنم. یه غریبه تو تختم ملافه ها بوی تو رو میدن. شاید فردا خوب بشه این جای زخم قدیمی من. کندوهای خالی برا من و تو امشب تنهاییم و من میدونم یه روز میری دنبال یه گل خوشبوتر. من میمونم خماره یه مشت از سر. گفتم نزن گفتم نشکن بالهای من. شدم یه زنبور تنبل روی شیروانی. گفتم نزن گفتم نشکن بالهای من. شدم یه زنبور تنبل روی شیروانی. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a wild ride to say the least for the past several years, and this next song I'm going to play is called Departure, which is actually a song that's based on a one-man storytelling show that I've done. Well, it's actually not based. The storytelling show is actually based from the song. And after this whole tragedy that occurred with my father that we'll talk a little bit about today, I was trying to find meaning in life again, finding purpose. And to me, that was sort of the root of all of my problems, not being able to find a reason to be alive. Every day I'd wake up and all I would pray for was to not be present. I just didn't want to be on this planet anymore. So I wrote this show with the help of some mentors back in New York. And it turned to be a very powerful storytelling performance where I would tell the story of my father and my mother and how they met, how I came to come into creation in this world, and just my whole journey in my family and the things that led up to the incident. And I think the reason I wanted to do this show was for two reasons. One, the process itself was very cathartic for me, just being able to relive that whole story and all of those memories and being able to tell it and share it with everyone. I felt it was very therapeutic for me. But the other reason was because, as I'm sure you all know, because in our community there's so much hearsay and gossip and rumors and negative things that happens in our media that when you try to really explain a position of yourselves, you can't do it in 140 characters or less on Twitter. And people just read a headline, as we still see that's still happening today, and people become outraged and react to it. I really wanted people to go with me on this journey of what my family was like, well, but also like showing footage of my family in the background. I wanted them to get a sense of what kind of person my father was and how much he loved his country, he loved his family, he loved his people. And his whole life was in servitude of others, of the environment, of bettering, humanity. And he was playing his own role, as small as it was. And if you had asked me one day, how would your father die? The last thing I ever would have thought was for him to be killed in a prison in Iran. And, it's one of those things where I always thought my dad, that one day they'd build a statue of him because of him saving and helping protecting the wildlife in Iran, helping protect the rivers and lakes and all the natural beauties that we had. But such was his fate, which was a very tragic one. And it's funny because this song, Departure, was literally the last song I ever performed in Iran. I was performing in another theater play called Raam Shodegi. And the very last song that I play is this song called Departure, which is basically about, leaving your country behind. And I didn't know at the time that I was going to leave for good when I played this song and when I even wrote this song. It's about this idea of wanting to get on the plane and go somewhere better and start fresh. You leave with such a rush from your home that you leave the door open and you're not even thinking twice about coming back. You just left everything as is. And I remember the very last performance, my dad came to the show. He was sitting right in the front, and I could see how proud he was of me and me being on stage doing what I loved. And it just makes this whole song and this whole process so much more poetic for me. So I'll just play this song and then we'll continue the conversation with Gian.
روز خیلی زود من و تو کمی پول منتظر پرواز بعدی منتظر کمی نور بدون هیچ خدا حافظی بدون هیچ یادگاری با آرزوی گم شدن توی ابر با آرزوی گم شدن توی اعصاب اساسیامونو فروختیم در پارکینگو باز گذاشتیم یه جعبه عکسای بچگی سر کوچه با میز و صندلی خاطره های من و تو دارم میپوسن دارم میریزم منم چشامو میبندم که همشو فراموش کنم توی اخبار میگن هوا همیشه خوبه خونه ها هیچ وقت مخروبه نمیشن توی تاریکی مطلق ستاره ها پر نورتر میشن دیگه هیچ سر و صدایی نیست ولی باز چشم باز میشن صداهای توی سرم خفه نمیشن دیگه هیچ کسی نمونده دردای منو باور کنه دکتر به من میگه که فرقی نمیکنه کجا بری صداها وقتی میرن که بهشون گوش کنی توی اخبار میگن هوا همیشه خوبه خونه ها هیچ وقت مخروبه نمیشن توی تاریکی مطلق ستاره ها پر نورتر میشن دیگه هیچ سر و صدایی نیست گم میشیم ما با هم تو شلوغی این شب عکس میشیم ما با هم تو خبرهای بی ربط
King Raam, everybody. King Raam. Today's edition of Roqe is brought to you in part by Donna Entertainment, one of our premier promotion companies for Iranian events and concerts here in Canada. Donna are bringing Siavash Qomeshi to Toronto and Vancouver this June, on June 14th at the Scotiabank Arena here in Toronto, on June 22nd at the Rogers Arena in Vancouver. This may be one of the last times to ever see the master composer, singer, performer. You don't want to miss it. Siavash Qomeshi. For tickets, go to ticketmaster.ca, or visit Donna Entertainment on Instagram.
All right.
Wow, that song. How do you feel playing that song?
It feels good, you know. Just it's like this emotional sort of dumping of all this negative stuff that I feel. I feel unfortunate for the audience because I have to dump all my trauma on them. But no, I think it's. I don't think there's anyone in the audience who's Iranian and hasn't experienced losing a loved one, or heard of someone, you know, of being in, you know, put in prison. Everyone over here has experienced some sort of tragedy in some form, and so I think it's very relatable. And I think it's interesting because there's a part of us Iranese that has like this very qeri, you know, style. We just like love to dance and go crazy, but there's also this
Not just a part of us.
yeah, it's probably the bigger part of us. But there's also this very solemn part, you know, that's very grounded and very emotional, and that's sort of the part that I like to tap into a bit more.
Sometimes the dancing lady, like, sometimes that feels fake to me. I know it's heretical. It's a bad thing to say in front of Iranians, but like, you know, the Mehmouni and everyone's already has to be drunk by 9 p.m. and the music is already playing really loud and stuff. And it's like, I get that that's part of a collective escape, you know, from a lot of trauma and shit that we have to deal with in the daily life, let alone Iran and the revolution and the war and all. But feels a little fake sometimes.
I don't know. I guess that escapism, it requires you to sort of suspend all belief in whatever it is that you have to be able to enjoy yourself. And what better way than dancing? And just because I think it forces you to be present in the moment.
Yeah, but sometimes I'm in the middle of a really good conversation at one of those parties, and they're like, you know, and I'm like, actually, I'm talking to someone. This is really great, you know. But it's you know, it's part of the cultural imperative. First of all, thank you for coming here. It's really nice to have you here. I've been wanting us to do this for a long time, and it's nice to do it on the podcast, but in front of a crowd. And so thanks, man. That's
we owe money too. He kept pushing me. Got to do Jean's show. So
yeah, thanks, Monty. Monty was brokered this. Yeah, but also, you know, I have to say, I'm grateful for you coming. Why? Because anybody who knows me knows that, because I made a big deal of it. A couple of days ago was I call him my son, but my French bulldog's birthday. April 2nd is his birthday. April 2nd also happens to be the birthday of young King Raam. So it's your birthday week. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ramin. Happy birthday to you.
Oh, God, yeah. Thank you. Merci. I appreciate it. Merci. Azizam
is part of our team, but also an incredible dancer. So she's usually looped into doing that. But happy birthday.
Thanks, man.
That's for you later.
I was born on Siza Bedar in Persian. You know, it's the unluckiest day of the year. So from then, you know, it's all been downhill.
It's all been downhill. Yeah, clearly. By the way, how's the drinking?
Oh, you know, I love me a bourbon, and it's funny because like
I brought you some options.
Yeah, you did. But I like bourbon. I'm a cheap guy. I don't need the expensive stuff. And on my own podcast, I love drinking bourbon. And one of my fans once emailed me. He's like, "Rom, I heard you love drinking bourbon. I want to send you a couple bottles." I'm like, "Sure, you know, why not?" And then I sent him my address, and he sent me like 72 bottles. This was like the beginning of COVID, like a whole freaking crate.
It's one of the joys of being a celebrity.
Yeah, so he forced me to become an alcoholic. So it's whoever, if you're listening, I don't know where the cameras are.
I'm not sure if it was his fault, but it's funny, you know. Before, like a few hours ago, we were doing a sound check here, and I was like, so in the middle of a really serious, you know, conversation with him about, you know, how we're gonna. So I figure you do a couple songs and then we can talk. And he was like, "Yeah, you got some whiskey? Can you bring some whiskey?" I'm like, "Dude, I'm talking to you. just bring some whiskey and it'll be okay." But what is that? I know you've talked. I mean, I've seen you on Sina Valiola, and everybody's just go, Mastio Rosti. That's the concept, but. What it really is it about drinking? You know, when you say I don't perform without being drunk or drinking, or I mean, I guess it's a big deal.
I know this sounds really bad to people, but who are kids who are listening to this and want to live a more healthier lifestyle. But I think everything is better when you're like a little bit buzzed, like. I think like sober sex is like really boring. I need to be like high or like drunk, or I mean it can be great too if it's with someone you really love, I guess, you know. But I know we're off to a great start. I know.
It can be great if you love the person, but most of the time when you don't. Wow, it's sometimes though. Wasted sex is it's a little bit, you know, it's harder to perform, is it not? Or
yeah, I guess so. I mean, no, I mean, I'm obviously this is me trying to justify a really terrible habit that I have, and it's at the end of the day, it's a coping mechanism. It's a defense.
That's
mechanism.
Where I was going with it.
Yeah, I mean, the honest truth is, you know, that it's my whole life I've sort of been a little bit depressed. I guess, and it's always just been there, like, you know, that Charlie Brown cartoon of the guy who's like walking with the
Schleprock.
Yeah, with the cloud that's always raining on him. That's sort of how I've always felt in my life, unfortunately.
Why did you feel like that? You seem to came from a
I
great
was
family.
really young, and I once asked my dad, like, I remember we saw like a dead animal in the woods. I was like probably 5 or something. I'm like, why do, you know, things die? And he gave me an answer, like a very scientific answer, but it just didn't sit well with me, and so I just really started obsessing about death a lot from a young age, which is not very healthy.
Yeah.
And my family is very like non-spiritual, so we're all like atheists. We don't really believe in anything. We are nihilists. We believe in nothing. I don't know if anybody gets that reference.
But you were also very shaytoon when you were a kid.
Yeah. I mean, they're not mutually exclusive. You don't have to believe in the God and like not be shaytoon.
No, not the God part, but the depression part.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The morbid part. I mean, the shaytoon seems to be associated with lively, having joie de vivre. You know?
It's funny because I grew up in Eugene, Oregon. So I was born in Boucher, but like 2-3 years old. My father, he was teaching near Ahvaz at the time. Before I was born, and that's where he met my mom. She got pregnant. I was born. My dad was hit by like an Apache helicopter, like shot him down. So he had to be taken away to a hospital. And my mom couldn't give birth to me because all the hospitals were filled with a bunch of people and like dead soldiers and wounded soldiers. And so this shaman, in the south we have these zarkhun. I don't know if you know what they are. They're like these like shamans, yeah, basically in the south, who through repetition of these songs and these mantras basically interact with like the jinns and the other worldly spirits. Very similar to like, you know, shamans in the Amazon, what they do with ayahuasca and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, so this Zarkhun mama basically came and gave birth to me in a house right by the Persian Gulf. And like I said, from then on Si Zabedar, so from then, you know, it was just like, everything has just been, you know, really confusing.
It's really, you should be a comedian. I mean, you got it's all set up for you, you know. But it's interesting because you're also, you know, in terms of the, I don't want to harp on it. I'm not trying to, but the drinking and performances are interesting to me because you also seem like a confident guy. You kind of, you know who you are, you know what you believe in. So what is the crutch? What is I mean, do you feel like, I know this is sort of a leading question, but do you feel like you are more you after you've had 2 or 3 drinks?
I don't know. It's a good question. I guess there's a part of me that feels more comfortable when I guess it's the inhibition. You know, when your inhibitions are lowered and you. This has actually like sort of been the goal of my podcast and everything that I do. Is just to really bring out the most honest.
Yeah.
You know, real truth, that part of ourselves that we're so afraid of showing and revealing to everyone.
Yeah.
Especially in the Iranian community, when people are like, "Voy, baghi chi fekh mikonan?" I'm like, who gives a fuck about baghi? Like, how many people is these others that you're worried about? Like, count them for me. It's like your aunt, your cousin, and your neighbor from like when you were in the 6th grade. Like, we tend to exaggerate these stories in our minds.
We also tend to lie. Part of Persian culture or Iranian culture is based on, you know, formalized versions of lying. Ta'aruf.
Yeah, ta'aruf is a polite way of lying.
Yeah.
That's essentially what it is.
And you want to get rid of that. You want unfiltered. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so because I grew up in America, in Eugene, Oregon. Eugene is like the hippiest town in all of America. So all the hippies from the 60s and 70s, they all migrated to Eugene because San Francisco became too expensive and bougie. But Eugene, like everybody is on acid. Everybody was just on mushrooms, from, you know, young kids to professors at university. We all would go to school barefoot. And it was a very kumbaya type of environment where people just would get along. And so my first impressions of the world, like
Formative,
you know, years of my life, I was always thinking about how, you know, we all get along on the playground with other kids, whatever, regardless of their race or gender or religious belief. And to me, that was what the world was like. Mm-hmm. Until I go back to Iran, like when I was 10. And from the first day, like the teacher slaps me in the face, the bus driver kicks me. You know, everybody started beating me up. I had never like confronted that kind of violence in my life because everything was just happy and love and peace, and so it was like such a culture shock. And very quickly I had to learn that it's the law of the jungle here at school. Like if you don't defend yourself, you can get into a lot of trouble.
Did you like Iran when you went back as a kid?
No, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I didn't want to be there. And but my dad just loved the country so much he wanted to be back home. Even though after he got his PhD at U of O.
Your dad is Canadian, was Iranian.
Yeah,
Canadian,
even though
right?
we lived in America for a long time, he refused to get his green card because of some weird misplaced sense of nationalism or whatever it was. That he loved his country. He's like, I belong to Iran. That's where I want to be, you know, for my whole life. We never got I just recently got my green card. He never even applied for American citizenship. Later on, I came to Canada.
I want to, segue into what we said we're going to be talking about today, and the song you played, and first of all, I'm really sorry about your dad. When it happened, first of all, I lost my dad 2 or 3 years before that, and so I know what it's like just to lose a dad in general, you know, and it's kind of the worst experience in terms of the grounding. You feel like the ground underneath you is suddenly gone, and my dad died in my arms, you know, so when I But when I heard this story and I heard the way it happened, it was just so grotesque. It was so horrible. And it would be horrible no matter who it was, but it was also horrible based on what we had ever heard about your dad, which, as you said, this scientist, this environmentalist, this person who wanted to do good. Maybe we start there. Tell us a bit about your dad. What would you want if you were to sum up your dad? How would you do it?
I mean, he was just someone who loved to serve. Like his whole life was in service, whether it was to his fellow citizens or to the environment or to the wildlife. He really was a humanitarian at heart. You know, and I know everybody says, "Oh, my mom is the best cook," or "My dad was the sweetest guy," but like, you know, I'm an asshole. I have a lot of fucking faults. I've made a lot of mistakes in my life. But my dad was like a fucking angel. He was such a pure-hearted, kind, compassionate human being that anyone who's ever met him would tell you the same. Like there isn't one person. And the way that he would also treat other human beings was in the same vein. And that's, I think, one thing he really instilled in me and helped me sort of shape my values in life, where he never really looked down or upon people, whether whatever their political beliefs were, whatever their economic background was, or their spiritual values. He always treated every single person like a human being.
And modest in the sense that he didn't care about wealth, right?
Not at all. And it's funny enough because he came from a very wealthy family. My father's side was a very aristocratic family, you know, really well off, at least before the revolution. After the revolution, a lot of the stuff got taken away. But it's funny because in his family, everyone is like super bougie, Louboutin this, you know, whatever, you know, the fanciest. And my dad literally like would wear the grimiest clothes and just be up in the mountains every day. You know, to him, the ultimate high was just climbing the mountain. And he was so healthy, like even a few weeks before his death, he had climbed like Damovand and all the, like he would climb Damovand like once a year. And yeah, it's just one of those things where I think that the tragic part of, for me, his story is, I think his Achilles heels was his idealism, his belief that this system it was possible to change it, you know, from within. I think that's ultimately what.
First of all, 2 steps back. In terms of him not caring about material wealth, you're kind of the same way. Like you've taken after him in that sense, right?
You know, money has come and gone in my life in a really weird and absurd way. And I once had like 550 Bitcoins, and I don't have them anymore, obviously, or else I wouldn't be here right now.
What, even if you're, so you're saying if you're rich, you wouldn't come to Ideas at the Roqe?
I'd probably be like drunk and high in the corner of some island somewhere.
Right.
And
As opposed to drunk and high here.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's weird because, you know, we'll talk about it later in the story. Like my own relationship with money is really strange and unhealthy at times because I never really learned to appreciate and care about it in a proper way.
But let me be honest, dude. I mean, people should know. You know, we've done a few of these. Whenever you book, when we do Roqe Live, when we do anything like that, one of the first questions people ask is, you know, is there pay? How much do I get paid? Totally legitimate. That's a fine question. It's okay, you know. You were like, I don't care. I'll come. You know, if you can get me there, I'll stay at someone's house. I mean, it was such a, you know, it was quite beautiful that you. It's just not a priority to you.
That's why I'm poor.
Well, but culturally rich. But you know, but when I was reading more about your dad, I was thinking, wow, you know, you're really following in that sense, following in his footsteps. Did he, you know? So I mean, whenever I see videos or pictures of your dad and stuff, I mean, he's always like in a mountain and there's sheep and there's, you know, a vista and there's a waterfall and he just looks like he doesn't look like a threatening person somehow, you know, and we know enough now to know that the regime in Iran finds ideas threatening. You know, anybody who's, part of the idea was a society of dumb people so they don't threaten the power. But did he know that he was a threat somehow to the regime? Did he know that what happened could be a possibility?
So it's just one of those things I think we all sort of agree upon in Iran. It's the opposite of the West, where there's no like legal recourse or due process. And in the West, it's innocent until proven guilty. In Iran, everybody's a spy and guilty until we say so. So it's like a completely topsy-turvy type of world where they can just create any type of scenario that they want about, fabricate any type of story. But the belief is that I think a lot of us Iranians always have back home is like, oh, this can't happen to me. We hear it in the news about someone else, like, why would it happen to us? We haven't done anything illegal, or like, we haven't done anything crazy. I mean, obviously everybody's political to a sense. You can't be Iranian and not be political, but nothing like threatening or crazy. And even with my dad and his work and his environmental work, they had to report to the Ministry of Intelligence whatever they discovered or see, or in terms of especially like, because the places where they were trying to protect the Asiatic cheetah, which there was only like 50 or less of them remaining, maybe even less now, were really near a lot of nuclear sensitive areas and locations. And to mix that up with as well, my dad, who's like a hardcore atheist, like non-religious type person, he used to teach at a very conservative university in Iran, which that's something that we always wondered, why would you go and teach in such a place? And his logic was always that if I'm in the belly of the beast, at least if I can change the minds of two of these people, I've done some good for my country. That was his logic. I think I follow the same logic in a sense where I feel that through my music, my art, my theater, my podcast, if I can also have an impact on two people, like I've done some good as well. So I sort of get it, but that was like really an extreme sort of version of that. But in a sense, my dad, his life was so transparent and like an open book, and he was just such a, like he would take the metro, like the subway to work every day. He had an old Land Rover, one of those really, really old ones that could even get like started with like a handle, like I don't know what it's called. Like he didn't have, like his most expensive possession in his life was an iPhone 1 that like my brother had bought him. Like he didn't have any like earthly possessions at all. And the scenario that the regime had created about my father and his co-workers and the other environmentalists that they had arrested was that we have uncovered the greatest spy nest in the history of the country. Like the Jason-born, James Bond persona that they created on my father. I was like, I wish he was that person. That would have been so fucking cool.
I mean, every once in a while, I do this for people who listen to Roqe regularly, they'll know it. Every once in a while, I have to press pause because I find, especially for Iranians, it becomes so natural to kind of go, oh, yeah, that's the way it is, Iran, that we forget sometimes how insane this is, how fucked up a country, an ideology, a system has to be for an environmentalist to be considered a threat. For an environmentalist to be a scientist trying to help the flora and fauna be the person that we have to charge with espionage, to being a spy because they're a threat. That's really crazy shit, you know?
And the crazy part is that, well, there's a Ministry of Intelligence, and then there was the IRGC intelligence, a completely separate entity that operates above and beyond the law. They're like the shadow government who basically runs the show over there. The rest of it is a joke. And they had like infighting. I mean, I'm trying to like list down the different reasons of how this thing happened, because we've put all of the pieces of this puzzle together and it still doesn't make sense. Even to this day, the only piece of evidence that they have used against our father and their team in the court, because there's no evidence, obviously they haven't done anything wrong. Like when they raided our home in the basement, I had a studio where I'd put like a bunch of equipment, I had like a drum set, keyboards, compressors, and effects. And they took all of that equipment as espionage tool. You know, as tools of espionage. Yes. And I'm like, no, that's a distortion effect. You know, it's not like a, it's a spy. I mean, the absurdity of the situation of the accusations that were coming around us were just so preposterous that, and it's part of their strategy too. They just throw all of this dirt at you, that they confuse you, and they terrify the people around you. So everyone's confused and like, what the fuck is going on? But the only piece of evidence it's not evidence, but the thing that they used against them was an article. And this is something that really pisses me off about Iranians, like who just, because a lot of Iranians who accuse the regime of character assassination, of this Orwellian Big Brother way of ruining people's lives by spreading false propaganda and rumors about them. And people, we all do this voluntarily a lot of times, in Twitter and Instagram, and just attack people for no reason. Even if sometimes you have a justified reason, but it doesn't mean that you should necessarily say, because our words have consequences. And some disgruntled person who wanted to work with my father and his partner, Murat Tahbaz, regarding a National Geographic project, he couldn't get the project to work with them for whatever reason, and he got into a fight with Murat. And he got so disgruntled because he couldn't work with the NGO of my father's Persian Wildlife Heritage Foundation, that he started writing all this sort of blasphemous, just libel, bullshit nonsense about how Murad, who worked at a firm in New York, their firm had built like a casino or a building in Israel. And when you write something like this about someone in Iran, you're putting a target on their back. You have no other intention. He's like, why does an environmentalist have to build a casino in Israel or some shit like that? And he couldn't get it published anywhere because everybody saw how dumb and pathetic such an article is. So he kept pushing it to all the hardline and conservative media until like Basij News, Rahbar News, Anogoh News, all these shitty ass, right-wingers. One of them, finally published it, and that just sort of stuck. That was when they first came on the radar of the IRGC intelligence. And to this day, that person who's a fucking nobody with 100 followers online, because of his disgruntled experience with this person, wrote something, and the consequences, I'm not saying that's the only reason, but the domino effect, if you look at all of the different steps of the way of weird things that connected to each other that led to his arrest and then to his subsequent death, it starts from there.
Just so people know, I mean, if you can, so in 2018, you get a call. You're in Iran.
No, I'm in New York.
Oh, you're in New York. That's right. Your mom and dad are in Iran, and you get a call that your dad has been arrested on charges of espionage and taken to Evin. Take us back to that moment and what happens in the days following.
I mean, my father was such a well-known figure back home. Like, whether it was the New York Times or LA Times writers who would come to Iran, they come and stay with us. Whether it was ambassadors from England, Germany, they would come and have dinner with my dad. Like, he was such a respected intellectual. He traveled all across the country. He was friends with all the local nomads and tribesmen, and so like different swaths of life. He was always connected with people and had like the pulse of society in his hand and as to what's going on. Sorry, I just went off on a tangent. What was the original?
Talking about at the moment in 2018.
Oh yeah. So this is why sometimes suburban helps, sometimes it doesn't. And yeah, so one thing I was always confident about was my dad knew a lot of people back home, essentially. That's what I'm trying to say. So he was arrested a couple of times or was asked to come in, but he never had any problems because they will look through his records and see that it's all transparent, it's very clear. So even my dad was warned, and his coworker Murad, by Kaveh Madani, another environmentalist who had gone back to Iran to work as well. And he was arrested for a while and taken into custody. So my dad sort of knew that he was on the radar, but he's like, I have nothing to hide. I've done nothing wrong. I've only tried to help, the wildlife and the environment. So when I got the phone call initially, I didn't think too much of it. I'm like, there's no way they're going to keep my dad for long. Like he's everybody knows him. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Nothing bad can happen out of this. But I didn't realize. I don't know why at the time.
And is your mom the one who gives you the call? Who called you?
It was one of our friends. It was a family friend who called me. I called my mom later to talk to her, and but the thing was that I didn't realize the gravity of the situation. I don't know, for whatever reason, I should have realized that this is something more serious. Looking in hindsight, because the first thing I did was I knew a couple of these like Aghazadeh type people in Iran. When you want to work in Iran, especially like in my field of like trying to become like music, my producer and the people, they were all connected to government. Those are the type of people you
Yeah.
have to get your
Yeah,
permits
sure.
from.
Yeah.
There's no other choice. So I called a couple of people that I knew in that vein, in that world, not people that I was really close with, but close enough to like be able to give, hey, can you help me out? My dad's in trouble, or they all blocked me. And again, that should have been a sign that, wait, something is wrong. Why is everyone starting to block me and not answering me and answering my calls? This doesn't sound good. And I didn't even know, my mom didn't tell me the way that he was taken away, because he was on a holiday trip in the north, in Shomal in Iran. And he was just hanging out with my mom and the dogs, and they were just enjoying themselves at a friend's villa when they were told to come into another station up there. And as they pull in, they're like, for the routine checkup, we just want to ask a couple questions. And when he gets there, they just put a bag on his head, throw him in a car, and take him straight to Evin, all the way from the north of Iran. And that was the last time my mom ever saw him. Like, it just happened like that,
Yeah.
you know.
You know, the part of your story of the story with your dad, I mean, we're going to get to the recovery and how you've gotten through this and all of that, because I think it's an inspirational story in terms of where you're at now. But you know, the hardest part, the part that I think is the hardest to recover from, is not only what they did to your dad, but the way they treated your mom, whose husband had been taken. I mean, I just know some of the details around that, which are just so hard. You want to share a little bit of what happened to what they told your mom?
Yeah, you know, the really difficult part about all of this is that no matter what's happening to my dad, they're constantly interrogating and threatening my mom. You know, they've raided our home with 50, masked guards in plain clothes, and they're breaking everything in the house. They're taking everything. Like I said, they went down to the basement where I had my studio, and
Sorry, you go back to Iran at this point, right?
no, I haven't gone back yet. When my dad was still in prison, I haven't gone back. I go back when I get the second phone call,
Yeah.
and the phone call is that, Raam, are you sitting down? That was the only thing that my dad's friend said to me, and I knew like immediately like what had happened, and I just fell on my knees and just started crying. And I had quit smoking at the time. I just ran and bought like 2 packs of Marlboros and just started smoking again. And I got on the first flight that I could with my brother, and everybody warned us to not go back because they're gonna arrest and detain you and your brother as well. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I can't leave my mother alone. So my brother and I, we went back, and I'll never forget, like the hardest thing was when I finally got to my home, when I got out of the cab, my mom was on the roof shouting my father's name. Wow. And every time I remember that scene, it's just one of the most terrifying moments of my life. She's just screaming, on the rooftop, screaming for her husband. And we try to figure out what's happening, because none of it makes sense. You're in a situation where you're trying to figure out why did this happen to us. We were such a loving, kind, sweet family. Everything was going great. Like, why did this have to happen? And like I said in the beginning, the way that the government bombards you with all this bullshit, they want to confuse you. They won't even allow you to see your father's body. They won't allow you to have like an independent autopsy. They won't let you hold a funeral. They would call every single funeral home and threaten them that if you guys try to have a procession, for Mr. Amami and his family, we'll fuck you up. Like so all of a sudden there's all this fear and terror everywhere. I'm walking in the streets, like people are following me with a camera. One of them once bumped into me, grabbed me, and like said, "Be careful to not get suicided," as a verb to me, because they claimed that my father had committed suicide in prison. And the way they broke the news to my mother, well, this whole 2 weeks, while they were constantly hurting and interrogating her and trying to accuse her of also being a spy, fear tactics, intimidation. So she would confess to some crazy bullshit scenario that they had made up to make their lives easier. And obviously she refused and she wouldn't say anything. And after not seeing her husband for 2 weeks, they called her and they said, "Come in, we have good news for you." So they basically took her away to a building And they interrogated her for like 5-6 hours, just grilled her with a ton of questions, like just complete and utter emotional abuse and torture. And at the end of it, they just told her that you're of no use to us. You have nothing solid, and this was a waste of our time. And she was just crying. She's like, what's the good out? She's like, I want to see my husband. Like, don't worry, you're going to finally see him. But there's just one thing, he's dead. They told her, they lied to her that we have good news for you, and the good news was that they were going to show my father's dead body to her. The level of cruelty that these people have, I think, is something so unfathomable to most people. We all know that they're bad people, but the level of their cruelty is so far what you can imagine, that killing people is like killing cattle for them and sheep. It's nothing. It's completely heartless. And when my brother and I went to the courts to try to figure out where his body was and get an independent autopsy, the judge who was overseeing this at the time, who was also threatening us, would show, photos of my father's autopsied body and his heart and liver, everything on the table. And he was just flipping through them as if he's showing photos from a holiday or something. And he's like, oh, your dad was pretty healthy. Look at his liver. Like making jokes of like my father's autopsied body. And these people they were like, yeah, it's so unfortunate that your dad was a spy and spying for Israel. So it's what had to be done. And I'm like, bring me one shred of evidence. I was shouting and swearing and I didn't give a fuck. At this point, you have nothing to lose. What do I have to lose? You've killed my father. I was swearing and shouting at all of them and in the building, trying to fight every single one. And I asked him, I'm like, if you can show me one piece of evidence, I'll be the first one to say and go on public television and say my father was a spy. Show me one piece of solid evidence. I'd be more than happy to be the first to go on national TV and say, yes, my father was a spy. But obviously it was all fucking bullshit and fabricated. I mean, the scenario that they had created out of him and the fabricated charges were so absurd, but it's like, Nazi techniques to make a lie so big, so absurd, that by the end of it, like when you hear the propaganda of they found like 3-headed lizards on the ground, like eating radiation poison or whatever, it just kept getting more absurd going down the line.
There's a scene that you've described that does feel like a movie, if you'll forgive me, but when you guys are basically, you, your brother, and your mom, thereafter, after getting nowhere in terms of finding out what's happened with your dad and just knowing that he's dead, you're basically escaping, you're leaving. You get to the airport, and your mother is going to be detained, and she says to you, you guys go. And you end up going, you and your brother. And you've said that was the hardest moment of your life.
I think anyone who would put themselves in my position, especially for the mothers here, I think they would relate much more. Where there's this unconditional maternal love that you would do anything, you would sacrifice anything for your children. And when we went to the airport, because we realized that if we stay any longer in Iran, we're going to get in trouble because the amount of attacks that were happening on our family were so absurd. And the people who kept leaving us alone on an island, it was becoming harder and harder to fend for ourselves. Everybody was terrified of being associated with us. My own friends and celebrity friends and family and other people, they wouldn't even text me condolences. They were so afraid.
This is the crazy part for me too, that your dad gets killed and then you lose all your friends. Yeah, I mean, it's not, quote unquote friends, yeah. I guess, right?
Yeah, but there's a part of me that sort of gets it, but I don't get it either, because the sad truth of it was that when I finally confronted one of my father's friends as to why aren't you answering our calls, why don't you come to his, to his grave, or why haven't you come to talk to my mom? And he's like, I don't want to be associated with you guys because I'm afraid they're going to take my land too. So your relationship with that person could be defined within a monetary amount.
Yeah.
So X times Y amount of land equals this amount of fear. There's a formula for it. Like it's so crazy to even think about that. You think that someone that you love, like I know some of my best friends are here. Like if that ever happened to any of them, there's fucking no way I would turn my back. And so many of our own relatives and close friends like turn their backs at the most difficult time. So when we were at the airport and we're trying to leave, our family always had this weird sense of humor. We were laughing at the airport, believe it or not. That's fucked up as everything was. We're like, oh, this is sort of like the ending of Argo. They're trying to get out of the airport, and we're like, how crazy would it be if someone came into the airport and told our mom that, or she has to, she's detained. Like literally 5 minutes later, somebody ran into the building and is like, who's Mariam Mombeni? Who's Mariam Mombeni? Screaming, and they came and they grabbed my mom. They say she can't get on the plane. And so me and my brother, again, we're fighting with the officers, we're screaming, and we're panicking. We're like, what do we do? And my mom was just crying and begging us to just get on that fucking plane. Just, don't stay back. Whatever happens, I just want you to be safe. And she's like, I don't want anything else in this world. Doesn't matter what happens to me. You and your brother have to get on that plane. Like in her final act of sacrifice, of motherly sacrifice.
It's hard to get on that plane.
And it's I'll never forget that moment, because who can leave their mother in such a situation like that? Like it sounds like the dumbest thing when I think back. I'm like, why did we ever leave? But my brother and I, we grew up in the West. We didn't know how things work in Iran. Like we were of no use there anyways. We had to take the fight to another place because life was just becoming much more difficult in Iran. And the fucked up part, again, regarding the cruelty of the regime, we had 3 dogs on the Lufthansa flight, and they said the dogs have to come off the flight. Like, why? There's only their sick sense of cruelty to fuck us up just a little bit more too. Like the lengths they go to mess with you are so messed up. But the Lufthansa crew came and said, no, you're not allowed to. It's part of Lufthansa property now because it's on the plane already. So fortunately.
Do you replay that moment? I mean, it really does seem like an existential question, It's like an ethics test,
Yeah.
Your mother is saying, get on the plane. Your mother is in danger. Do you get on the plane? I don't blame you for doing what you did, obviously. I mean, but I don't know that I could get on the plane, or I don't know what I would do.
I mean, there's a lot of things that I look back on, like, what would I have done differently? Should I have spoken up sooner about my father when he was already alive and still in prison? Because I thought nothing would happen. Because people told me, like many do in Iran, where they tell you, don't tell anyone, don't talk about it, don't post anything about it, it'll be fine. They're under this illusion that if I just don't say anything, the regime will leave us alone. And people have sort of been conditioned into this fear, into this state of fear, where that if they just operate enough to breathe. And what kind of existence is that? To just barely get by and barely survive. That's no way of living. And yeah, sorry, go on.
So you come back to North America and you sink pretty low. Like you've talked about, you were suicidal, your whole family was suicidal. But reflect on. I mean, you're already this person who says I grew up kind of being depressed. I'm the sad sack guy. All of that stuff. How are you? How is the first few months after this for Ramin?
We didn't even have time to grieve our father's death. So that's the thing. So because we had to try to save our mom now. So the grieving process was now thrown on the back burner. We have to think about my dad later. Find a way to bring justice to his story and save the other environmental prisoners, his other co-workers, because we have to save our mom first. And crazy enough, in Iran, both of our lawyers got sent to the same prison that our dad was killed in.
For being your lawyers?
Yeah. So I mean, that's how crazy the country is. Literally, your lawyers end up in the same prison cell that they were trying to defend the person in the first place.
Wow.
Like, you can't write this shit. It's like, stranger than fiction. Life is, a lot of times stranger than fiction. And when we were trying to get my mom out, I met with, Chrystia Freeland, I had to call out the Trudeau, by the way, on Twitter for him to finally get to talk, because in the beginning they were sort of like, we don't want to ruffle any feathers, or we don't want to like piss off the Iranians. I kept calling him. I went on Christian Amanpour's show. I called him out. So I just, until like, for them to finally do something, like, this guy's a dual Canadian citizen.
And
My
what
mother
did they do?
What?
Well, what did they do?
I mean, he just sent out a tweet, but he didn't, it fucking did nothing. And at the time, they put me in touch with, what's that thing? GAC, I think. And again, they were so useless, these people. I swear to God, like, some of the most useless people I've ever come across in my life. And
What would you have wanted them to do? What did you want Trudeau to do?
at the time, well, the first thing would have been to have like a direct form of communication, in a sense where we demand that you release this woman. And by the time, like, I had to like ask everywhere from every major network to finally, for him to put out, because he finally put out a tweet that you need to return this dual Canadian citizen. But the problem was that even when I went to the UN, I met with the head of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. I met with a lot of important people. I met people from like Democrats. I met people from the Republican side. I met Canadian parties, from conservatives, the liberals. I met everyone who I could, anybody that could help me to save my mom, I would reach out to. And most of the times, the answer I would get is, oh, it's only one person, only one death. What can we do? If it was a genocide, maybe we could do something. Like, This is literally what they told me. If it was a genocide, maybe we could, write a strongly worded letter or something. So you can't tell me that, and I've never used the race card in my life. I don't believe in that shit. But you look at the historical facts of other Caucasian Canadian prisoners who have been captured in other countries, and they've been returned home like immediately. So I'm just saying, like, well, why did my mom take 2 years instead of 2 weeks?
Yeah.
And they didn't do shit about it either. Like, we had to figure out a way to get her out eventually. So in a weird way, as much as I love Canada, I love this country, don't get me wrong, but in a weird, fucked up way, we are like second-class citizens here.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not sugarcoating it any other way. That's just the way it is. But during this whole ordeal, so while I haven't been able to properly grieve the tragedy of losing my father, I'm trying to figure out a way to save my mom. I've accrued a huge debt in gambling. I fucked up my finances. I'm in debt. I've embarrassed myself. I'm in a terrible situation.
Sorry, when did you start gambling?
After my father's death, like, it just like
And
spiraled.
were you a gambler before?
I mean, a little bit, but after that, it was just like to levels of absurdity. It wasn't just like gambling, though. It was like gambling. I was like the trifecta of gambling, sex, and drugs. Like, anything that could. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I was just frequenting brothels and everywhere on the planet. I was just drunk and stoned out of my mind. I just wanted to escape. I didn't want to be present. I just didn't want to deal with this person, this sack of meat. I just didn't want to be here. And I had tried a couple of times to kill myself, but I guess I was too much of a coward to go through with it. And so I just found a way to slowly kill myself with these addictions. And so I'm just like in this completely zombified state of mind, and nothing is making sense to me. And finally, after 2 years, we're able to get my mom out. And even getting her out was weird, because it was sort of like through a weird anomaly in a way that we don't even know how the hell she got out. We just got her a new passport, literally. And I don't know if it was a crack through the bureaucratic system or what it was, but because every other time she had tried to leave the country, they wouldn't let her out. And afterwards, that we finally got our mom out. And when they say when it rains, it pours. So my mom had sent all of our stuff from Iran, from our home, our villa, and everything, the sofa, the furniture, and photos, and even the chandelier, like everything, through a big shipping container to Canada. And since at the time we were in Vancouver, we didn't want to because there was a lot of stuff. Like, I mean, imagine like 5 homes worth of junk. And I mean, if my mom hears this, she's like, "That's my precious stuff. How dare you say junk?"
Call it junk, yeah.
Well, I mean, the funny story is like this is what I'm going to tell you. So we had to put it away, but it was so much that we couldn't put it in storage. So one of my friends was a developer in Vancouver, as most Persians are, and he had an extra empty home, in one of the fancy neighborhoods. It's like, why don't you just leave your stuff here? Bless his heart, being kind human being that he is. And so we put all of our stuff in this house. It's like sort of a decrepit house, but still like a big house in a fancy neighborhood. So I didn't think there was any way that anything could go wrong. Well, a bunch of crooks came, broke into the house, and
Oh my
stole
God.
most of the stuff, and they pissed on everything else, and they just burned half the shit up. So everything was ruined, basically. So that's why my mom is still like really angry that we I mean, I'm secretly, I'm happy that most of this stuff got ruined, because we already have so much junk. You know, my mom's such a hoarder. But yeah, I mean, everything that could go wrong, what is it, Murphy's Law? Like, was going wrong. Everything. Like, nothing was going right in our lives. We had our 3 dogs, and we were just crashing at different people's homes at the time, and they're like, oh, sorry, but, you know, the dogs, they poop too much, you can't stay here. So we just kept changing homes until we could get to a more stable place ourselves. And the truth of the matter is that there's so much shit happening now politically in Iran. There's other protests, there's other political prisoners, there's other events happening, world affairs. Every day there's a new hashtag for a new prisoner, and they're bombarding you, and people can't keep up.
Well, actually, I was on that note, and I don't say this with any disrespect, but I was wondering about if you, it's so weird, you know, because whenever we talk about something personal that is horrible, it has to do with, it might have to do with, say, Iran or in general, and we live in a dystopian world right now. So whatever has happened to you, we can find a person who something worse has happened to in Iran this week, right? So do you feel a sense of guilt sometimes where you, I mean, they call it survivor's guilt, but I mean something where you kind of feel almost intimidated to talk too much about your own troubles because you know at the same time everybody's going through this on some level or another, and on the other hand, what you've been through is so devastating you should be shouting it from the rooftops.
Yeah, there's a part where, you know, some people have some faith or belief system where things, they make sense in some spiritual way to them. Or there's an afterlife, we'll meet again in heaven or hell or wherever it is. And, you know, for me, I didn't have like a really strong system of belief in anything. And it obviously will make life easier if you had like that those certain sets. But I think for me, it was trying to find just meaning in the mundane again, just finding meaning in everyday life of, yeah, I do want to share my story, but not in the sense that I want people to feel sorry I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me.
You don't feel you're a victim.
I still think, my friends know that, I still think I'm one of the most privileged and luckiest people on this planet for the life that I have. I think I'm so blessed with all the amazing things and friends and events and things that I've come across in my life. I'm so grateful for everything that I have. And in a weird, fucked up way, you know, when I was a kid, all I ever dreamed about and wished about was to have this crazy, wondrous life where every chapter would be filled with, you know, stories and adventures. And that's all I wanted when I was on my deathbed, to have like something interesting to say. And, you know, they say be careful what you wish for. So I think I got a little more than I could handle. But at the end of the day, was something that gives me a lot of peace in terms of my father, and I was able to move on and help with me. It was like psychedelic therapy helped tremendously. Because regular therapy wasn't fucking, like my therapist, she would cry more than me during the sessions. I'm like, girl, like I'm the one who's supposed to be crying, like not you. And bless her heart, I know like it was coming from a place of empathy and compassion, but you know, it's like, wait, this isn't what I signed up for, you know?
I'm not sure that's a good therapist.
And that's the thing.
You were consoling your therapist.
And I went to a
It'll
bunch
get
of
better, really.
I went to a bunch of different therapists for that reason, but it's, you know, there's a really sweet guy or girl in UBC who has a master's degree, and the height of their drama in their life is that, you know, like one time one of their neighbors slept with one of the other neighbors in their suburb. Like that's like the craziest thing that ever happened in their like Sex in the City type of life. And in our world where we come from, you know, it's like people get hanged for like the dumbest shit every other day, and we forget to move on and do the dirty dance again the next day. So we're just like, there's so many paradoxes in us coming from that part of the world that a lot of people in the West, they just can't understand. So you're trying to make sense of it, and you're talking to someone who really has can't even grasp the gravity of your situation.
Yeah.
So I'm like, fuck this shit, I'm going to the Amazon, you know. And, you know, there's different plants that I tried. One was ayahuasca, which really helped, and another one that was iboga, which was the most intense. They say it's like the closest thing to a near-death experience you can get. Literally,
dear.
like the way that the Bwiti tribe from Gabon even use the plant is that they bury people underground with only their faces out of the dirt, and you're like high for 36 hours, experience this near-death, terrible trauma, and it's like pretty intense. And you're like,
great.
why the fuck am I doing this? But when you come out of it, you feel, I don't know, you just feel, everything feels good. And during that trip, I'm finished, it's just that I was able to, I know people, like I said, I don't believe in anything, I'm not a spiritual person, but these psychedelic trips, they take you to weird places in your mind. One place it took me was with my father in his solitary cell, when he was in solitary confinement. I went into that cell and sat and had a conversation with my father during my trip.
Was that ayahuasca? What was
That was the iboga. And during
Iboga?
that,
It's not a weight loss drug?
and it comes from a plant called ibogaine. And so, or actually ibogaine is a medicine version. Anyways, you can Google it, iboga. And during this part where I had this conversation with my father, you know, he was basically telling me that, you know, how he was using this metaphor of how we're on this river, we're in a boat in a river, and he had to get off at some place, and it's going to be difficult, just the three of us trying to paddle this boat, but like we have to continue our journey. This is where his journey ends, and all that he wants for us. And I knew deep down in my heart, this is what he would want, for us to be fucking happy. And it was just such a wake-up call. It was so simple, and I know for a fact, like if I'm ever in such a place, that I would want nothing. Like I always tell my friends, like during my funeral, play like the music, the punk rock, and have a dance and smoke a joint and celebrate my life. I don't want people to be sad. And so during this conversation, I was overwhelmed with this sense of peace, where all of a sudden it made sense. I had closure. In a weird way, and so I was able to move. So that part of my life was healed. Like I miss my dad tremendously, I still do, but that part of my life, I really do feel it's like
that's amazing.
It's pretty much healed. I mean, there's other difficulties that come afterwards in the absence of him, and the other traumas that one faces, because then it's about putting back the other pieces of your life. Now what's my purpose in life?
Well, that's I mean, the title of the talk was
It's a while to get here.
finding meaning, yeah. And I'm curious I mean, you said it a couple of times, and any of us who've been in a really, really low point, and I have, is you do ask that question. You look up to the stars, whether you believe there's a God or whatever. You go, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? And that's the part where the finding meaning comes in, and what is your purpose, as you say now? Have you gotten closer to figuring that part out?
Definitely much closer. I think one thing that I had to come to terms with was that there's no justice in the universe. The universe is indifferent.
That's a tough one to come to terms with. Yeah.
We like to use these big terms like love and justice, and yet we don't have a real tangible way of explaining them and what they are, because they're man-made concepts.
You don't believe it's a fair world?
No, it's not. It's absolutely not a fair world.
You don't believe in karma?
No, fuck no.
Fuck no.
No, not at all. I do believe in the fact that if you're kind, and you're someone, and you look into people's eyes and you treat them with kindness, you treat them with love, like you're more likely to get a positive response than to go someone and start slapping them in the face and expecting them to love you. Why aren't they loving me back? But, in this sense...
You don't believe that if you put good energy into the world, you'll get back good energy?
No, like the example that I made, like I do believe that if you really look into someone's eyes and you treat them with kindness, there's a better chance of them reciprocating that kind of, but there's no guarantee of it. There's no guarantee that if I just end up doing a bunch of good things, that good things are going to happen to me. Some of the worst people throughout history have been the most powerful and the wealthiest. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, that throws that theory right out the window. I think we tell ourselves these stories to feel better about ourselves, to sleep better at night. When we put our head on our blanket and our pillow.
That's what I think religion is for, to make you feel better about dying. have learned that the world is not fair, is unjust. What else have you learned?
For me, during this whole process where for a couple of years, I really lost myself in the addictions and in the suicidal sort of way of thinking, was that lack of purpose and meaning. And I'm sure like many of you have read like Viktor Frankl's Search of Meaning or other such similar books. I've read a lot of books on philosophy, on life and death, and trying to find what my purpose is in this world. What role can I play? And I think we all have like this Hollywood notion in our lives that somehow, we're chosen or we're so important that we have to do something great. Or we're sold this, like, remember how like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, that TV show, I don't know if Iranians remember that show, we who grew up in the West, it would always start with the segment of, who's special? You're special. And so you're brought up with this belief that you really do think you're special. And Iran had a different version where I think a lot of young kids that they all thought that they were like Imam Mahdi, like maybe I'm the secret Imam Mahdi. I don't know, maybe I was just delusional. But I feel like there's like this, I think we all have like these delusions of grandeur at some point in our life where, we think we're much more important than we are, but we're not. That's what I'm trying to say. Whether it's, I have super wealthy friends who think that just because they have like $1 billion, they're more important than everyone else on the planet. And I have like really poor friends, who can be as insufferable as the other side.
Do you feel on some level, there's that expression, I've been through worse, Since you've been through worse, it's like if you had your car out here and you walk out to there and you get a ticket, do you feel like based on what you've been through, you're sort of inoculated, like you see that ticket and go, well, I've been through worse?
Oh yeah, well, it's 100%. I mean, the amount of like, but one thing I do find interesting in myself is whenever I'm driving and that road rage comes up, I'm like, dude, you're not in a rush. Why are you angry? Like, you don't get angry at anything. Why are you getting pissed off at this?
Too. I think that's, I don't know why.
I still don't know it, because it's funny, because my dad was the same way. He's like this hardcore intellectual, very polite person, but he would sit behind the wheel, and the curses and the stuff.
Maybe it's like an Iranian man thing. I'm the same way, and I'll be so angry at some fucking. I can't believe you stopped it, and then it's like this old lady, like, and I'm like, why am I so angry at her?
And I feel so bad. I'm like, why are you shouting at this old lady? Like, she's done nothing to you. It's awful.
Fuck yeah. What is your relationship with anger? Do you think being angry is a good thing?
One thing I really do believe that is that we all, like, there's certain elements and certain feelings and emotions that we do have to express. I don't mean in a negative way towards others, but that's why, like, if you, I don't know, go into the woods and start, like, chopping on some wood or go work out or whatever way or system, because I think one thing I've learned during this healing process is that the more you internalize things, the more that they can turn into, a cancer of sorts. They can turn into something negative.
Literally.
And they can come and reveal themselves in later parts in your life whereas if you express them, and this is what I think in terms of finding meaning, this ties into that and the legacy of my father is always about servitude. It's always about helping your fellow man. It's always being a humanitarian, no matter what background, no matter what belief, just be kind, be kind, be kind. And when I started the podcast, Mastir Asti, it was sort of the same idea of just wanting to be super honest and open and invite people to a conversation where they could feel comfortable enough to talk about themselves and their problems without fear of judgment, without fear of, reprisal, without this sort of toxic way that, especially in our culture, people look down upon one another when they show their vulnerabilities. Like in Iranian culture, being vulnerable, like in the West, being vulnerable is considered to be a very healthy thing.
Yeah.
In Iran, in Iranian culture, as soon as you show any sign of vulnerability, fuck this loser. He's such a beta.
I did an essay about this last week about how it's time for Iranians to finally embrace therapy. And I know there are great Iranian therapists and there are people who go to therapy who are of Iranian background, but there's still that thing. I had a friend, this was like a week and a half ago, who is going through a really rough time. And I said to him, maybe get you a good therapist or, a psychologist. And he was just like, Yani chi, yani mani, you think I'm crazy person. I'm kind of, and I was like, wow, this is like a old school thinking. It's like a young guy in Toronto, but it's the Iranian thing. It's a tough one.
Yeah, I told one of my friends wants to go to therapy, and he nearly beat me up. So Iranian guy. So.
Yeah, I know some of the subject matter was a little heavy, but I actually really appreciate that Raam was down to do this, to have this conversation in particular. It's not an easy one to have, even if you are a famous person who's talked about this with Christiane Amanpour or whoever, and to go into the kind of details you did tonight. There's stuff that I learned tonight that I've just been researching you for a week and I didn't know. So I really appreciate your openness. I appreciate you guys for being here and for wanting to be part of this kind of a talk. Sometimes it's a little more effusive. Sometimes it's more performative. Sometimes it's very real like this. And so thank you to you. Please stay, have some food, have some drinks, talk to us, take pictures with Raam. Thank you so much for being here. And once again, King Raam. From one of our latest events at the Ideas at the Roqe Hub series, that was King Raam. Hope you enjoyed that. For any thoughts, feedback, you can find us at info@roqemedia.com or producer@roqemedia.com. You can write us at producer@roqemedia.com. Or if you're interested in back episodes of Roqe, our contemporary history of Iran series, anything at all to do with who we are, what we do, go to our website, roqemedia.com, roqemedia.com. And that is full time for today's show. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together each week. Tina, the photo and video queen. Super Parisa, Savvy Roham, Ghazaleh, the OG. Special thanks to Kimia, Smart Pega, Talented Anahita, Methodical Kabe. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please do subscribe on all or any of our platforms if you've not done so already. You can find us, the show, on Instagram at Roqe Media, which is also where you can find us on YouTube, Roqe Media, and Apple and Spotify and SoundCloud and CastBox, and Telegram if you prefer your information in Persian and in English. It's bilingual on Telegram at Roqe Media. You can find me on Instagram at Jian Gomeshi. And as ever, Mizun Bashi.